JR Take Sportscast, as always, Jonah Hoffman and Ryan Rogers coming at you live, and we understand it's been a minute since the two of us have been the dynamic duo that we are behind the microphone, but we've come together now. I've gotten over my illnesses, and Ryan, how have you been?
Been good, man. Been busy as hell. Got a lot of stuff going on lately, and this last week was very busy in the NFL world with some moves that happened and with the combine going on. So
yeah, and I don't know if you saw, but Derek Carr just signed with the Saints this morning.
Yep. So he's got a 4-year deal with $100 million guaranteed. Which, Jesus Christ, Saints, like, you're already over the cap. What are you doing? But on top of that, the average is $37.5 million a year. So I think that kind of sets a ceiling for the Geno deal, more than likely. Have you seen some of the reports coming out about the Daniel Jones situation?
I don't want to read them.
Dude, he apparently is asking for more than $45 million a year.
What does he think he is?
I don't know, dude. He threw 15 touchdowns last year.
Oh, I might have said this on the last episode. I wouldn't give him $45 a year.
Yeah.
I would make him pay me $45 to even talk to him.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, I think he's not going to get anywhere near that from anybody, but I do think the Giants, when it's all said and done, they're either going to tag him, which the franchise tag is like $32 million or something like that, maybe even a little bit more. And that's the thing about the franchise tag that sucks is, yeah, it's on a per year basis, not as high as, like, you know, a $45 million contract, but it's a guaranteed you're paying Daniel Jones $33 million this year against your cap, and there's no way out of it. It's a done deal. And the cap debt, or the franchise tag deadline, is tomorrow. So we're going to, by the time this episode comes out, probably there may be a resolution on that, but I'm projecting that Daniel Jones is going to get a contract from the Giants, because I don't think either of them want to do the tag. And I think it's going to be $38 to $40 million a year, which is insane. I'm so glad we're not in their situation, but I think that's what's going to happen, which is just bonkers to me.
Yeah, no way am I giving Daniel Jones even franchise tag money. I'm hesitant even on giving Geno that money, but
yeah.
But
honestly, like, I know given the way the NFL is now, like, if you want even like a middle of the road quarterback, you got to pay insane money for it. Like, look at Kyler Murray, look at Kirk Cousins. Like, these guys are getting $40+ million a year. So I know that's the price of admission, but, like, honestly, besides like a Mahomes or a Jalen Hurts or one of those top guys, like, I don't think it's worth it, because you're basically removing the possibility of having like one or two more blue chip players on offense or defense because of that bloated salary cap figure, you know?
Well, I also kind of just look at like all of the quarterbacks. Let's just go from like eighth best quarterback to like 18th best quarterback. And it would help if we had those rankings in front of us.
Let's just do this. I'll pull up the like passing stats for last year, and we'll sort it by pass yards.
Okay.
Or let's do touchdowns, because yards that's just a volume stat.
Okay, so I'm looking at this list of quarterbacks right here, and the top three right off the bat separate themselves from everyone else, in my opinion, and that is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. In no particular order. Probably giving Mahomes the lead there.
I would throw Jalen Hurts in the top four. I think he's below these three, but I rate the way he was throwing in the playoffs this year. Like, it's not a fluke, man. Hurts is playing like a top 5 QB.
Yeah, we'll throw Hurts, and then we'll throw Trevor Lawrence in there. Everyone else, to me, and I don't want to hear Justin Herbert's name, because the guy's a 500 quarterback player right now. Anyway. All of those guys that aren't top 4, top 5 are kind of, to me, they're kind of all the same thing. Like,
yeah, I think after the top let's say 8 quarterbacks. Like, fuck it. Let's throw like Aaron Rodgers in there.
I'll throw Tua in there when he's healthy as well. Like,
and even someone like Lamar Jackson, who is also in the contract conversation right now. I mean, obviously a generational talent, but he's injury prone. He has never thrown for 4,000 yards. His rushing threat is still what makes him dangerous, which you look at the shelf life on that athleticism, it's not nearly as long as the pocket passer, which you can make an argument of whether that matters or not. All that aside, he doesn't have a great playoff record. And I think what separates when I think about paying quarterbacks the top tier money, it's like, can I win a Super Bowl with this guy? Or like because of them? Or can I win a Super Bowl with them if we build a super team around them? You think about the Rams with Jared Goff and even Matt Stafford. Let's be real. Matt Stafford is not one of these top guys.
It's
Jimmy
the question
Garoppolo,
of can we win because of them or can we win in spite of them?
Yes.
And when I look at everyone that's past like the top 8, like I'm just to name them so we get a clear understanding of who the top 8 are. In my opinion, I would go Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lawrence, Hurts. Probably 6 would be Tua. 7 probably Geno. 8 probably Kirk Cousins. And 8 is like Kirk Cousins is the ringleader of all of those quarterbacks being similarly mediocre.
Yeah,
I feel. So, do we really want to break the bank? Or I don't know, break the bank is the right term for it, but I just don't think paying Geno Smith 30 whatever, even franchise tag money is worth it. Like, he can go somewhere else and we can have someone like Drew Lock on the team for a year, test those waters, because if anything I have learned this past season, to trust Pete and John with the quarterback, and I'm just going to let them handle that.
We've never had bad quarterback play besides Charlie Whitehurst under Pete Carroll. It just, the guy is, he doesn't have the reputation for it for whatever reason, but he's kind of a quarterback whisperer. And I also really trust John Schneider's ability to evaluate the potential in quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. But on that same note, like I love Geno and I would love for him to come back on like a 2-year deal. Let's say 25 million this year. Then next year, like the cap figure is a little higher, but we have the option to trade him if he performs really well. But to transition into the events of this weekend, because it all relates, I want us to draft a quarterback this year, and I think I want us to do it at 5. And I know maybe that's not something I've said a lot in the months past.
You're buying into that combine hype, are you?
It's not
fever.
It's not just the combine fever. It's just the kind of dynamic of the situation right now. And I've been thinking about it a lot. And it's like, dude, when the fuck is the next time we're going to have a top 5 pick and have the ability to even take one of these guys? Because as John Schneider said himself, they don't grow on trees. I mean, yeah, you can always, try to get super lucky and get a Russell Wilson in round 3 or, a Dak Prescott in round 4. But most of the guys after round 2 are career backups or, mediocre starters. It's just a fact. Tom Brady's the biggest outlier in NFL history with the career that he had.
And Tom Brady's don't grow on trees either. So
they really don't.
And that is a good point because the 3 quarterbacks, 4, Jalen Hurts was a 2nd-round pick, but the 4 of the 5 that I named top 5 quarterbacks are all first-round picks.
Yeah, Mahomes is the latest pick of that group, and he's
the 10th. Best one.
Yeah, and he was the 10th overall pick.
Right.
And some people at the time thought that was a reach because he was very toolsy, played in a spread offense, blah, 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 blah. I'm kind of done giving a shit about that, to be honest, because I think, I even look at someone like Zach Wilson. I think had we drafted him, I think he'd be top 10? No, but I think he'd play a lot better under Pete Carroll because we have a proven track record of getting the most out of these guys. And the Jets have a proven track record of being horrible to their quarterbacks. I mean, their best quarterback in their franchise's history is Joe Namath, and I don't even think he was good. He just made a guarantee that they were going to win, and then they won. Oh, by the way, their defense gave up 7 points. So the Jets' quarterback history is abysmal, and if they get Aaron Rodgers, he better play really well because they're going to eviscerate him if he doesn't, because that's just the way it is there.
I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to the Jets.
You don't think so?
No.
I just have you looked at the contract side of his situation?
Not at all. The Jets, like, I don't know, man. Does Aaron Rodgers get a say in where he goes?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
he's not going.
The thing
to the
with
Jets.
the Aaron Rodgers situation is he has all of the leverage. Like,
of course he does. That is such an Aaron Rodgers thing to have in your contract.
Yeah, and like the fact that he's like, all right, I'm gonna go chill in a dark hole in the ground for 4 days, and the entire NFL landscape is like, okay, Aaron, you do your thing. Let us know what you want to do, and like they just have to take it because he has the contract guaranteed. If the Packers for some reason were crazy enough to cut him, the dead cap hit is like 40 or 50 million. So they're basically just like chopping their balls off by releasing him. And also if they trade him, the dead cap is really high too. So they can't demand a crazy amount of compensation for Aaron if they trade him, because they're going to have to get that team that gets him to take on a big chunk of that 2023 hit. So there's not an easy out of this situation. And the thing that's interesting is I actually thought Jordan Love looked really good last year when he was playing. And they've spent a first-round pick on the guy. Like, you're wasting that rookie contract by continuing to play Aaron Rodgers.
Well, no one ever said it was a good plan, first and foremost, that the Packers drafted Jordan Love when they had Aaron Rodgers, and he was... When was this? 4 years ago?
It was 2020. So they drafted him, and Aaron Rodgers immediately had 2 MVP seasons in a row.
Yeah.
So think of it. Jordan Love, 3 of his rookie contract years are already done. 2020, 2021, 2022.
Well, I don't think that's such a bad thing because he has no leverage. He hasn't. The only game I've seen him play in, he looked terrible against the Chiefs. And lost.
Yeah, that was a while ago though, wasn't it? That was like 2021.
That might, COVID? Might have been around there. But even still, I don't know. I just like look at the way Rodgers and the offense started clicking at the end of the year, and I gotta think that maybe he would want to roll the dice and see if things can work out this season. I don't know. Do you think Aaron Rodgers is going to be traded? Do you think he wants to be traded?
I think it's going to come down to whatever he wants to do, because after this next season, it's a lot easier for him to be traded or released. But yeah, the Packers kind of just have put themselves in a quagmire with this situation. I never thought that the amount of years they put on his contract he signed last year made a lot of sense for them, given his age and the fact that they have Jordan Love. But yeah, my prediction is honestly that he stays with the Packers, because the only other options are the Raiders or the Jets, really. Maybe a team like the Panthers sneaks in, but the fact that Aaron has so much control in the situation, like, I don't know. It seems like he either retires, goes to the Packers, or goes to one of those teams. Those are the options here.
I could also see him going to a team, or at least maybe wanting to go to a team that is going to be in a nicer weather location, because Aaron is getting older. It's going to be harder for him to play. He's going to be more at a disadvantage than the 20-year-olds playing in the cold.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure,
because he's double their age,
and he's had a lot of injuries.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what Tom Brady went to somewhere nice. Brett Favre, I know he went to 2 cold places, but at least he went to a dome when he got older.
That's true.
So I mean, I don't know. It's going to be an unpredictable offseason, I think. But like, Justin Fields could get traded. We don't know. Like, I don't think that's going to happen, but nor should it happen. Like, if the Bears do that, they're fucking stupid as hell. But I don't put it past them, because they took Trubisky over Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, that's brutal. I think with the whole Justin Fields situation, like, He still has a lot of room to grow as a passer for sure, but the talent is there, and his rushing ability is just as good as Lamar Jackson's at this point in their respective careers. So he's a uber talented player. I think were they to trade him and then draft, I don't know, Bryce Young, I think Bryce Young as a passer is better than Justin Fields right now, but there's still a tremendous amount of risk in that. The Bears offensive line is horrible, and Bryce Young is a smaller guy. Like, he can't take the hits that Justin Fields can. I do think Bryce Young is very, very, very shifty and will be able to protect himself decently well, but he needs to go somewhere that's not Chicago. Like, it seems like a dumb move in my opinion, but who knows? It's really going to be, I think, one of the more interesting situations as the draft gets closer is what the Bears do with that number 1 pick. Because I think the most likely scenario is they just trade down 1 spot to the Texans. Because you got to think about it. The Bears probably want 3 options with that number 1 pick. One is Jalen Carter. The whole legal situation with him might throw a wrench in this entire top 5 situation because it's 2 misdemeanors, but the optics of it are not good, and the potential character.
Well, because he didn't mention it to anyone.
Yeah.
Until it came out, and then he just kept it a
Honestly,
secret.
after the whole Malik McDowell thing, like I was really high on Jalen Carter, and I would still love to have him, but dude, you do not want to waste a top 5 pick on someone that, like, if they end up getting in legal issues and not being able to play, like, that's a franchise killer for a number of years.
And
so.
it did. Malik not having to even see him step on the field
and
definitely set us back.
And think of the trades we made to try to make up for that fucked us over even more. So, I'm still shell-shocked from that. I would take Jalen Carter at 20 at this point, but I don't want to spend the number 5 pick on him. If we do, I'm not gonna be mad, but am I gonna be nervous because, like, he's the best player in this draft, but he's also kind of the scariest because of this situation. But with the Bears, you got to think they're gonna either take him or Will Anderson. Both those guys, from a pure talent standpoint, are the top 2 players in this draft. I don't really care how you rank them. Or they trade down to, I don't know, 9 or 10 and take a top offensive tackle. Because that's just as they're so bad on both lines that's the biggest need on their team. And they could net another 1st-round pick, another 2nd-round pick. Like, the Bears, if I'm the Bears, I'm trying to get as many top 50, top 100 picks as you can in this draft. Because the number 1 overall pick ain't going to make a giant difference alone. So that's kind of what I see happening. And then I see the Texans probably getting Bryce Young, but
you think Bryce Young, well, I mean, we saw it with Anthony Richardson this past week. Like, do you think Bryce Young will still be that number 1 quarterback come draft day? I think it will change because if you look around the league, remember last draft when everyone was oohing and ahhing over Malik Willis, and they were like, "Oh, he'll go number 2 to the Lions," and then
I do remember that.
Wasn't even the first quarterback taken.
Yeah, it wasn't even taken until nearly the 4th round. I do think this year's quarterback class is so much better than last year's class that it's not really it's comparable, but it's not.
Well, but it's not just the quarterback position though. I feel like the media with all their fucking groupthink bullshit.
Yeah.
That everyone just like agrees with it. Everyone like, oh, this person was a top prospect during the combine, but now it's closer to draft day, and now we like this guy more for no fucking reason.
Yeah, which was like the whole Aiden Hutchinson versus the guy that Jaguars ended up taking. I can't even remember his name, which is obviously not a good sign for him.
Yeah, but it's not a good sign for them because they tried to be cute and
Trayvon Walker, that's what it was.
Yeah, they tried. I mean, not that he's not good, but Aiden Hutchinson objectively had a better season.
Yeah, he arguably should have won Defensive Rookie of the Year. He had a phenomenal rookie season. And that's I feel like it's a similar situation quarterback wise where, Anthony Richardson is absolute freak. I guess let's just pull up his numbers real quick because they're that freaky. A 4.3 40-yard dash. This guy is over 6'4". He's 244 pounds. That shouldn't be possible for a quarterback to be able to run that fast. And he set the combine record for the vertical and the broad jump. That's serious explosive ability there.
It is exciting. I'm not. I would definitely have a huge grin on my face if we drafted him. I'm just
yes. I'll get back to that later. But I'm hearing reports of suddenly there's talk about him going number 1 overall. And that I feel like is kind of comparable to the Malik Willis thing last year. I do think there are some teams out there, because from what I've heard, there's not a consensus from the team's owners on who quarterback 1 in this draft is. But the media's general consensus is Bryce Young. And honestly, watching the tape, I think he's quarterback 1 in this draft too. Because I think Bryce Young, you start him week 1, and there's a decent chance he's a top 10 quarterback like top 12 minimum, I would say, with Bryce Young. He's that good.
I think he gives you, of all the quarterbacks, I think he gives you, like, of all the rookies, he gives you the best chance to win immediately.
I agree. But I do think, moving on to the next guy I want to talk about, I think CJ Stroud also is like just below him, because I think Bryce Young really hurt himself not throwing at the combine. I think that was a mistake. Like, I don't care that he didn't run the 40 or bench or whatever. He should have thrown at the combine, because CJ Stroud went out there and looked fucking godlike. Every single throw he had was perfect. The way the ball leaves his hand was just clearly better than every other guy.
Mm-hmm. I watched a couple highlight videos, a couple over the shoulder throws on the outside.
Yeah, he threw a 65-yard dime. Like, there's not many guys that can do that. And the thing is, like, I know this is a kind of a dumb way to measure quarterbacks, but how pretty the ball looks when it leaves their hand is something that always, like, because remember, like, some of the best quarterbacks I've ever watched, like Drew Brees, for example, threw a beautiful ball. Russell Wilson back in the day.
Romo always had a really nice ball placement, I thought, and same with Rodgers too.
Yeah,
but what was I going to bring up about CJ? Oh no, not CJ. About Bryce Young not throwing in the combine. One thing I always think of is like how Pete Carroll. I remember maybe last year he mentioned how he doesn't like it when players aren't willing to
compete,
put themselves out there and compete.
Yeah, I remember that he said that last year too.
Like that. I think of that every time I hear about someone like not like choosing to sit out rather than perform and show your stuff. Like, I don't like it either. It's almost like stepping away from a challenge or like backing down and not wanting to. It's almost like how when people don't do something because they're afraid to fail. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. Like,
yeah, and that's what I thought last year when Malik Willis decided not to run the 40. I'm like, why? Like, just run it. Even if you run a 4.5, that's a good time. Like, come on. I just think I think it's kind of a cowardly move a little bit. So I agree with you, but I think that may be one thing that bumps him out of the number 1 slot is you had Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, and I mean, some people were really impressed with Will Levis too. There's teams out there that have Will Levis as QB1 in this draft. I've heard a lot of buzz of that about the Colts. I don't see it, to be honest. I think Will Levis has a chance to be a really good player in the NFL. I don't know. I think there's a lot of risk with that guy compared to.
I mean, the guy puts mayonnaise in his coffee. So
yeah, that's scary to me. I think he has kind of a cocky attitude. Reminds me of Baker Mayfield a little bit. Not nearly as bad. Maybe I'm being a little unfair to him. I just like he got up to the podium and he's like. They asked him why he's throwing at the combine for whatever reason. He's like, because I got a cannon and I want to show it off. And I was like, all right, let's see the cannon. And honestly, I was like, CJ Stroud threw it way further and better than you. Anthony Richardson threw it better than you. Your deep ball looked comparable to Stetson Bennett's. Like maybe I'm being harsh here.
I don't know exactly what that means, but I know it's not a good thing.
Stetson Bennett is like your size.
I know. I look at him and I'm like, you're not going to the NFL.
Yeah, and Will Levis is huge. He's not as big as Anthony Richardson, but he's the same height and like I don't know, 10 pounds lighter or so. So that's still a massive human being. But he does have a really good arm, but like he was a little inaccurate in the throwing drills. Like, I mean, Anthony Richardson, the biggest knock on him has been his inconsistency and accuracy and lack of experience, but he looked more polished and accurate than Will Levis, I thought. Just my take, but those are your top 4 guys, and there's not a consensus on who's going to go number 1, but I would say my projected order of what they're going to go in is Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. And I think the Levis thing, I just keep hearing Levis to the Colts, and that's all I have to go off of, right? You know, like it was like last year with the Steelers, I kept hearing, was it Malik Willis to the Steelers, or was it the guy they ended up taking in Kenny Pickett?
It was Malik Willis to the Steelers, because remember they were saying Malik Willis and Mike Tomlin were getting along really well.
Yeah.
Whoever made up that fucking bullshit. That's
the thing. This is lie season, man. Like every team, every owner, they're all fucking lying to try to trick each other and use the media to like get other teams to
kind
overpay.
of what we do in fantasy a little bit, but like times a billion.
Yeah,
and like
a lot bigger scale.
There's billions of dollars at stake.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation, but I think what's going on with the free agent market with quarterbacks right now, I don't think there's anything more valuable for the Seahawks than to get one of those 4 guys, because they're not going to have a high enough pick next year to get one of the top 2 guys. Because if they do, then I'm going to be mad, and we might be looking at regime change with the coaching and owner and the general manager. And I just don't see it happening with the roster that we have. So I think this is going to be our last chance to get, if we want to go the route of getting a top tier quarterback prospect and having them sit for a year, whether we re-sign Geno, or one thing that not a lot of people are talking about, we can re-sign Drew Lock for $3.5 million and have him be a bridge quarterback for a year. Maybe he plays great, and we can tag and trade him next year and start this rookie that we get.
That's kind of always been like what I wanted to do, but it is really intriguing. Like when you look at these portraits of these young upcoming rookie quarterbacks, and you're like, wow, looking at their measurables and like the thought of them actually being our quarterback is very intriguing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot more intriguing than, I mean, he had a great year, but Geno Smith or Drew Lock, like both of them.
It's way more fun.
They've exceeded expectations, but this shiny new toy is a lot more intriguing. And I don't really even want Anthony Richardson, but like it's hard to like look at the 40-yard dash time, the height, the size, the weight, and
the arm strength, dude. He can whip it.
And yeah, or I guess that was CJ Stroud that I was watching throw the other day at the combine, but yeah, it is intriguing for sure. Will Levis, almost no interest in. I really hope we don't.
I'd be fine with him at 20. I do not want him at 5. I don't think he's top 5 pick worthy. He's also going to be 24 by the time the season starts too. He's not a young player.
I'm kind of surprised that Carolina is so like they're so written off as drafting a quarterback, because they just drafted Matt Corral last year.
Yeah, he's kind of an undersized guy, and he already got hurt in the preseason last year. He actually, I didn't even realize this, at his pro day he threw the ball like 70 yards. He has a good arm, but he played in that RPO offense that's basically just like fake in college. So you got to teach him how to play NFL quarterback essentially from start.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it is interesting how people are talking about the Titans taking a quarterback this year. They just took Malik Willis. Like, I don't know. They give zero breathing room for quarterbacks these days. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
But of the top 4, and let's throw another guy in there too, because we haven't talked about him. Hendon Hooker. He has an ACL injury. He's a little bit older.
There
but
were talks of us taking him in like round 3.
I'd be down for it. He is gonna come into the league. He's apparently gonna be ready week 1 health wise.
I like his name.
It is a good name.
Hendon Hooker.
I liked his interviews too. He's funny. He's got a good personality. But he's 6'3". He's about 215. He can move. He's a good athlete. And he throws a great deep ball. He throws a moon ball, Wilson-esque. And he doesn't have the like arm or athletic or like pocket presence of Bryce Young ceiling that the top 4 guys have. But if he were healthy right now, I would be guessing that he'd have a bottom of the first round grade. He was a great player for Tennessee, and he's a winner. So that's a guy that if we don't get one of these top 4 guys, I would be pretty stoked if we got him in round 2 or 3, because I think, like put him against a guy like Drew Lock and see who the better guy is, and let's move forward. But of the top 4 between Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, which guy would you be most excited about if we got at number 5?
Was Bryce Young in there?
Yeah.
Him, obviously. He was my choice. But
I just don't see him making it that far.
I don't either.
I don't even see him making it past 2, to be honest. But it'd be if we somehow draft Bryce Young, I don't want to re-sign Geno at all, because you want to play Bryce Young week 1.
Yeah, Bryce Young would be my number 1 choice. Honestly, probably 2 might be the Florida quarterback, just because the numbers intrigue me more than the...
Dude, he's got the body type of Cam Newton, but he's faster and more athletic and can throw the ball a little bit better.
Yeah.
He's way more raw, but let's just have you rank them. Rank your top 4.
All right. 1 through 4 would be Bryce, Anthony, CJ, and Will Levis. And honestly, like, looking at all these quarterbacks, like with Hendon Hooker and Stetson Bennett and the TCU kid,
TCU kid looked like shit at the combine. He ran
really
fast, dude. I don't want to just make fun of a guy that for no reason, but I was watching him throw, and I'm like, I feel like I could throw better than this guy. It looked bad. He was throwing ducks on the 5-yard out. Like, you can't throw a spiral indoor in Indianapolis on a 5-yard route. Are you serious?
Well, it made me kind of got me thinking about Michael Penix, because
oh yeah, I forgot he's coming out next year.
Yeah, well, he obviously, yes.
He's a lefty, too.
Chose to stick with the Huskies for another year, which is very rare to do nowadays because
I think
of
part
the transfer
of it is,
portal.
What do they call it? The NIL money or whatever, now that they're getting paid a little bit? I think that's a factor.
I also think it's a factor to try and bump his draft stock for another year, because if he has another good season, if he does well with the Huskies next year, he was already definitely going to be drafted if he entered the draft.
Yeah.
If he has another big season, he could like bump his way up and be like a top, like he could be one of the top 4 quarterbacks we're talking about right now.
I think that's actually likely coming into next season.
And I think that's probably what he had in mind when he made that decision. He probably thought, well, there's all these quarterbacks. They're probably going to be making bank when they sign top pick money. I want to be one of those guys. I don't think I have a very good opportunity to do that this year, so I'll wait and do it next year.
I also think that's why Anthony Richardson came out this year, because literally after 2 games, NFL scouts were drooling over him. Because the tape, like, there's a lot of bad in it, let's be real. But the highlight reel from his year starting at Florida this year is fucked up. Some of the things. Like, dude, who runs for a 62-yard touchdown as a quarterback, breaking 4 tackles against LSU? Like, that's insane. So, I guarantee you his team or whatever was like, you got to enter the draft this year and just blow up at the combine, because you will get picked top 5, top 10. And it's exactly the situation that's coming out. For me, top 4 is pretty similar. I really like Bryce Young, but I'm going to put him for the Seahawks as number 3. I'm going to go CJ Stroud number 1, because I think you can also start him day 1. Like, maybe you don't. Maybe you have a bridge year for him because he's 21. He's really young, but he's so accurate. I think you could kind of have him play pretty similarly to what you just had with Geno last year. And then Richardson, just because I want to see you take this Madden creative player freak and put him under Pete Carroll to learn for a year or two. Like, God, just imagine the best case scenario with Anthony Richardson is like Hall of Fame talent. Worst case scenario is like Terrell Pryor. But then Bryce Young, just because like obvious, it's going to work with Bryce Young. I'm not worried about him not working out in the NFL, even though he's small. And then Will Levis is number 4 for me. And honestly, there's a sizable gap. Like the top 3, all 3 of them, I would be elated if we come out of the draft with. Will Levis, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I think I see.
He also just played at like objectively the worst college of the 4 of them to play football for.
Who I see a lot of in Will Levis, like so much that it almost freaks me out? Carson Wentz. I think they're extremely similar players. And I mean, Carson Wentz had an MVP caliber season, but they both do this thing that when things start to go bad, they try to play hero ball and it can get ugly. So I don't know. I feel like Carson Wentz and Will Levis are very similar. And hey, I mean, that might be like young Carson Wentz. This is a first round. I think he's a second overall pick. So like, I see how it's worth a high draft pick, but I just don't know. Like, if he's the only QB left on the board at number 5, I'd like to trade down to like 7 or 8, 9, and then pick up the best remaining player. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Hopefully, like a year or 2 from now, Will Levis isn't like the number 1 quarterback in the league, and we like don't have to reflect on this. And
I give him permission to track us down and beat us up if that happens, because I feel like we've been talking shit about him for like a year.
Yeah, I have
for like no reason.
I don't think I've said one good thing about him on this podcast, and so if I'm wrong, it's gonna look really bad on me.
That's how I felt about both Cam Newton and Josh Allen, because I was, for both of those guys, I was like, oh, they're going to fucking suck in the NFL.
I definitely thought Josh Allen was going to just be Jay Cutler.
I didn't even understand why he was getting talk of being a first round pick, because I looked at his college numbers and they were awful. Like, but since then, that's why I can look at a guy like Anthony Richardson and be like, look what other teams have been able to do. And I think we're just as good, if not better, at developing QBs than some of these other teams. So
yeah,
this is a very long-winded QB discussion, but I think it's important, and I think it's going to be the biggest topic from now till April 27th. And honestly, what a fun draft season to be a Seahawks fan. Like, sitting here a year ago, it's been just about a year since we started this podcast, so thanks for everyone who's been along for the ride. But we were talking about the Wilson trade. It happened March 8th, 2022. So we're almost exactly a year away. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking about the Seahawks 1 year ago from now was awful. I was like, our future is fucked. What are we going to do? I didn't want Pete Carroll. I didn't want John Schneider. I was wrong about all of it. And now to be in the situation we're in, where we have 5 top 100 picks in this draft, and we need, this draft is just as important as last year's, I think. But
a lot can happen in a year. I mean, like you just said, last March, we were on suicide watch because we had just lost the best player in our franchise's history for what we assumed was going to be picks that would never amount to what we had in Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, immediately we were wrong following the draft. And then, I mean, it was also a wild summer just in general, like reflecting on as a Seattle sports fan, just because we had high hopes for the Mariners too, and they were underperforming. And so it was like everything about Seattle sports for me was like, holy shit, this sucks. And then they start doing good. And then the Seahawks do really good.
And then the Kraken start doing good.
And then the Kraken do really good, and they're still kind of relevant. So it's like really cool how like
a lot can change in a year.
Sports will fluctuate, and things will get worse and they'll get better, and it's just it's kind of the beauty of being a sports fan is the journey and not the ending.
Yeah, I honestly these days I think I have the most fun during this time of the year where like free agency starts a week from today. The draft is in 6 or 7 weeks. And there's so much speculation, and you're hearing all these stories. The
spring is like my favorite time for sports, I think, because like you just said, it's almost like so much potential, for great things on the horizon. Like you have baseball coming up, and when the Mariners are good, it's different. It's like when the Mariners suck. Who really cares? I mean, objectively, Seattle fans have shown statistically they give a shit about baseball more when the team is good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the prime example of that.
Yeah. And I don't blame anyone. Baseball is not an exciting sport. Like,
if you're bad, it's not fun.
If you didn't play it, if you don't love it, like, I can totally respect that you're not into it. Fine. But, I mean, when Seattle can produce a good product, we will put forth the money to make an effort to go and watch. And we proved that last year. But I guess my point is like, yeah, I'm super excited, and the springtime always, there's so much potential because of the draft and I don't know, the NBA playoffs are happening and
free agency and trades and stuff too.
Yeah.
It's so like all
spring is my favorite time for sports, I think.
Specifically for the NFL offseason too, like March, April, maybe beginning of May, it's the last exciting time till like August for football. It's
true.
So boring, like from May through July for the NFL.
Yeah, there's
world.
really that's like the true off season. I feel like for the NFL is May to July, because you really just.
After the Super Bowl, it immediately goes to draft talk.
Yeah, well, because July 27th is like week 1 of training camp.
Yeah, right? And then you get preseason like first week of August usually.
Yeah. So really, there's like those 2 months of time off, May and June, and then it's football.
Yeah, I remember last year during those months when we were doing these podcasts, it was like, oh, dude, what the fuck do we...
It was really boring, because the Mariners weren't winning either, so it's like we had nothing to talk about.
we made it work, though. I don't even really remember what we talked about, but...
The only thing I could remember that was a godsend that happened was the fight against the Angels.
Oh, yeah.
Because we weren't winning yet, and so we had that interesting thing to talk about, but that was kind of fun, and then we started doing good after that, so that was kind of cool.
So let's we just spent a whole lot of time talking about quarterbacks, and is good because it's the most interesting discussion. But I know, Jonah, you haven't really tracked what happened at the combine too much, and I also do want to caution that the combine is not the most important fucking thing in the world. I
kind of want to continue to not track the combine. You'll be the combine guy, I'll be the non-combine guy, and that's how we'll do this experiment. And we'll see.
I'm fine with that.
We'll see who's right and who's more correct with their predictions and opinions on these players.
I have to say, for me, the funnest part of watching the combine is just being like, holy shit, these guys are so unbelievably more athletic than I am. Even take the broad jump, for example. Have you ever tried to do that?
I don't want to.
A shitty broad jump is like 9 feet. I don't think
shitty. Well, I mean, you got to, the way I look at a broad jump, a basketball hoop is 10 feet. So
yeah, that's
anyone that can dunk, I have respect for. I can't dunk. So, I mean, I shouldn't be able to. I'm only 5'10". So
yeah, I mean, I could when I was like 16
I've
and
seen
weighed.
You dunk, and
I can't anymore. I gained way too much weight. Now I can't jump that high. But yeah, I mean, people like 6'2", 6'3", it's not as crazy to do. But let's just get into some of the freaks that I got my eye on that I hadn't really heard of much before the draft started. And the wide receiver testing wasn't that great this year. Honestly, like some guys that I was really expecting. So I guess let's just go position by position. So starting off with running back, Devin Achane Achane, maybe. I don't know how you say his name. Whatever.
I don't know either.
He's kind of a smaller back. I think he's like 5'8". Yeah, 5'8.5", 188. So not a big guy, but really, really, really fast 40-yard dash at 4.32. So
Kind of gives me Tariq Cohen vibes.
he reminded me of, do you remember Leon Washington?
Oh, yeah.
He was about the same size. So I got my eye on him for the Seahawks just as maybe a change of pace kick returner type of running back.
Yeah.
Because that is a need on our team. But Bijan, he was as advertised. I mean, 4.46, I don't care what anyone says. That's fucking fast, especially when you're 5'11 and 215. But the just absolute it's a weird thing to describe, but the ease of his movement when he does things, like he looks like he's not trying when he does everything. He looks like he's just like, oh, this is so casual. And while he's doing that, he's running away. He's bowling over people.
Yeah.
Like he's got to be the best running back prospect to come out since Saquon.
I remember when I was watching his tape, one thing I thought about him was he looked like a very balanced runner.
Yeah.
Like he looked very stable when he was cutting back and running through holes and finding holes. It did look like he was doing it very nonchalantly. Like it wasn't explosive. Well, it was and it wasn't, if that makes sense.
Like, I know what you mean, though. It doesn't really look like he's moving that fast when you watch him, but then you watch everyone else around him and he's pulling away from them. Like, clearly he is, but he just looks like he's like taking a little stroll. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be a special player. I don't want us to draft him because we'd have to use the 20th overall pick, and we
just don't need a running back that high.
I want us to draft one, but in like round 4 or 5, you know?
Exactly.
But another guy I have my eye on for the Seahawks. Well, I also like Chase Brown. He's kind of like a Travis Homer type to me. But Zach Charbonnet, I don't know how you say it.
I think Charbonnet is right.
He's a big guy.
You think he'll fall to us?
It'd have to be like, I think he might be there in round 3 or 4. Running backs don't get picked that high anymore, so
yeah, that's true.
We'll see. He may be too high of a pick for us, but he's definitely not a first round guy for sure.
No.
But I think this running back group on the whole is like last year. You had like 4 or 5 guys that came in and were really successful. You know, like obviously our guy K9, Breece Hall. What's his name on the Texans? Damian Pierce. Then you had Isaiah Pacheco end up doing pretty good, and then the guy on the Falcons, Algier. But I think this year you may have more like 7 or 8 guys come in and contribute, get like 800 to 1,000 yards as rookies. I think this is overall a better group, especially at the top. Bijan to me is a better player than both Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker. He's that good, but I don't want us to pick him. It'd be unreasonable.
Yeah.
But moving on to receiver, like one guy that I just want to highlight real quick because I was kind of blown away at what he did, and not in a good way. Jordan Addison has some of the best tape. He's really small, dude. I did not realize he was this small. He's 5'11". He's only 173. That's featherweight for NFL.
Yeah, but I have heard he can get into the open field like nobody else. That's the only, like, I remember that scared me too when I was looking at, like, probably 8 months ago, I was already salivating over the 2023 draft, and I was like, okay, who are going to be the top players? And Jordan Addison's name came up, and I was like, ooh, this guy, he seems fast as fuck. And then I looked at his weight, and I was like, oh, never mind. He's smaller than me.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing is his hands, like, having hands smaller than 9 inches, like, Tyler Lockett catches everything, and he has tiny hands, too. So, like, it's not the end of the world, but it is a factor. I mean, it's harder to catch when you have smaller hands. But the thing, like, look, it's not like 4.49 is a slow 40-yard dash, but the fact that Anthony Richardson, weighing 70 pounds more and being 5 inches taller, ran faster than him just surprised me. I thought Jordan Addison was going to get like low 4.4s, like high 4.3s based on what I saw on tape.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't want to put too much value in fractions of a second, but I think you want a guy to be a little more explosive than the numbers he put up at the combine when you're that small, you know? But on the same note, a guy that is really a size outlier being just so tiny, Tank Dell, 5'8", 165. He makes Jordan Addison look like the Hulk.
Yeah, holy shit. I was expecting you to show me someone that was like 6'5", 240.
No,
with the name Tank.
Yeah, this guy he's one of the small. He's like, you know, like a Julian Edelman body type, except for even smaller. And again, another guy I was expecting to run in the 4.3s given his college production, because he got 17 touchdowns last year. He's you know, some people had a low first round grade on him, but they adjusted his time, but the unofficial was in the 4.5s, and I was like, you can be small, but you can't be small and like not explosive. Like, if you're having a hard time cracking 4.5 at 165, like, granted, I can't fucking do any of this shit, but we're not talking about me. We're talking about NFL players here.
We're talking about the NFL standard.
Yeah. So that was a concern to me. I'd be fine with, because he could be a really good kick returner again. And he's shifty as fuck. But I wouldn't draft him any higher than the third round.
Did
to be honest.
Jackson Smith and Jigba?
So
did he not perform at the combine because of his injury?
He performed at the combine and he ran nearly an NFL record three cone drill, which is more about agility than top end speed. I think he would have barely cracked the 4.5s if he did a 40, just based on what I've heard, like 4.6, 4.5 kind of 40. I don't think it matters. I think he's probably the best receiver in this class.
That makes a lot of sense, because I've heard that his route running ability is top notch, and that's what makes him the best receiver in the draft.
Well, you know what is kind of fucked up, and I know this is like very subjective, but Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave both said that he's better than them. So,
really?
Yeah. And think of how good they were the rookie year. I just think he is someone that's going to be able to come into the league and just be open on every play.
Can you click on him real quick? Does it show anything else besides that drill?
He's got good size. I mean, this receiver class, one thing you'll notice is they're all like your size, if not smaller. It's really weird.
I also really like that height and weight, like 6'1", 195. That's around Jamar Chase size.
Yeah.
And I think
Justin
that's like
Jefferson's around that size too.
Yeah, I think that's like the perfect height and weight for a receiver.
So yeah, he did basically everything besides the 40 in the bench press. But like, the bench press can be a fun thing to see receivers do, because like a guy I'm interested in us getting in the later rounds of the draft. I cannot remember his name. Let me look at it real quick. Michael Wilson, 23 reps at 225 as a receiver. That's a strong guy.
Yeah.
So
DK did 25, I think.
Yeah,
and that's a lot. And everyone knows how strong DK is.
That's more than some linemen get. Like, that's fucked up. But Jackson Smith and Jiba, I don't know how you say his name.
I think it's just Njigba.
I think he's wide receiver 1 in this class, to be honest. I know a lot of people have Quentin Johnson from TCU as number 1 because he's bigger. I don't know. He had kind of a drop problem.
I'm going to need to see another TCU guy be successful. Unfortunately, fucking Jalen Reagor ruined TCU guys for me. And now I need to see living proof that one is not Jalen Reagor. For me to trust TCU receivers again. And the fact that they got their asses beat so badly by Georgia also just makes me like, God, like, you guys could like not put up any points with your backs against the wall. I don't know if I really want like anyone from that team.
I will say, like, the amount of Georgia players that showed up to the combine and were the biggest fucking freak I've ever seen, it makes sense. Dude, Georgia is insane. Like, the amount of first round talent last year and this year that they have in the draft is crazy. But one guy I wanted to highlight who had never heard of him before, and I don't even know if he's going to get drafted still because his production was horrific. But Bryce Ford Wheaton, 6'4", 221 pounds, almost 10-inch or almost 9.5-inch hands, long arms. He ran a 4.38 at that size. And so if we're talking like 6th, 7th round pick, I'm totally down to take a flyer on someone like that because besides DK, we don't really have a big body in the wide receiver room. And
the problem with this, with my take on that, Ryan, is how many times have we gotten like careless, or not careless, but taken a receiver late or gotten cute with the receiver pick and it doesn't pan out.
Yeah.
And then next year we'll draft another guy. Like we keep just missing. And
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I like the idea of taking Smith and Jigba at 20, even though the Titans got, or the Eagles got AJ Brown for their 18th pick. Like I do like the idea of like maybe getting a proven guy as opposed to a rookie, but I really like the kid from Ohio State.
I think of it this way. What if we get CJ Stroud at 5 and then Smith and Jigba at 20? They already have the rapport. Like that would be crazy.
That would be like a Burrow, Jamar Chase type situation.
Which I don't know. That's just, to me, like it's not the most logical thing for us to do, but it's the most fun. I would be so excited to see that.
I don't know, man. I think that would be pretty damn logical because we fill the quarterback, the biggest question mark,
and he'd be wide receiver 3 in our offense. Like, and that would be so lethal.
When I mean Lockett's getting older, move him to full-time slot. Even though I know Smith and Jigba played a lot of slot in college,
I kind of don't think that matters.
I agree.
I thought it mattered. I know I sound like a flip-flopping idiot, but I have been convinced since watching a little bit more of him that it's not going to matter because his route running period is already like top tier. And whether you put him in the slot or put him outside, like he's going to find a way to get open. One other guy I wanted to highlight that I've been interested in is this guy, A.T. Perry, because he's another big guy, 6'3.5", 198. People were saying he was going to run in the 4.6s. He ran a 4.47. That's really fast for a big guy. And he was a touchdown machine at Wake Forest. So this is another like 4th round, 3rd round kind of guy. Right. But if we don't get a chance to take a swing at one of the top guys in the first 2 rounds, he's someone I got my eye on for day 2 for sure. Because I think everything I hear about him from like interviews and whatnot, I've done a lot of research in the last 2 weeks, and he seems like someone that's going to come in and be able to contribute day 1, especially since we don't need a number 1 wide receiver. You know, we have DK for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
We're looking for a guy to fill that wide receiver 3 role and potentially wide receiver 2 in a couple of years when Lockett, hangs up the cleats. But yeah, that's kind of the overview of what I saw from the wide receiver group. Not as good of the last couple drafts for sure. Is my main takeaway. This is however, an extremely good tight end class. This is the best tight end class I've watched since I started.
I hope we don't draft a tight end.
I know that
we don't need to. We don't need one. We have really good tight ends.
Let me propose a situation to you, because I'm not going to spend a time talking about all these guys because they all look good. Most of them are big white dudes that can catch the ball and block really well. But there is a unicorn in this year's draft, and his name is Darnell Washington.
See, I'm not that impressed with him because I got my unicorn last year in the Colts guy. Dude. He's also 6'7", and he's 15 pounds lighter, but and I guess he's
got 11-inch hands.
I'm adding to your point because the guy that I'm talking about, I don't even remember his goddamn name, Jelani Woods.
Mm-hmm.
He showed flashes of being an Antonio Gates type of player, but of course the Colts had no idea how to use any of their talented players. So every time he caught a 50-yard pass, they just put him on the bench for the rest of the game.
Yeah, the Colts were so frustrating that, like, I had Alec Pierce and Matt Ryan just did not throw him the ball. And then when he got hurt and someone else came in, he got like 80 yards and a touchdown. I was like, come on, throw him the fucking ball.
Yeah.
But Darnell Washington, here's the thing. We don't need a tight end at all. We have a great tight end room, and they're all under contract.
He looks like he's 40.
I think this is just a bad photo because he looked pretty normal at the combine.
I mean, he just looks like he shouldn't be. How old is he? 21?
Yeah, something. He's like ridiculous. 21 years old.
He looks way older than me.
Dude, he was one of the biggest players at the combine. And if you watch his tape, like, here's the thing. If we hypothetically traded Noah Fant for like a 4th round pick, I'm down to take him in the 2nd or 3rd round because, like, let me put it to you this way. This guy has the measurables of a Gronkowski. If there's even a chance you can get that out of this guy, why not take him? You know, like, you can build explosiveness and power from different positions. And
God, it'd be like having LeBron at tight
basically,
end.
yeah.
Those are like, that's like the same size.
And he ran a 4.6 being that big. That's fucked up. And I don't really know the context of the other measurables besides, like, I don't know, 21 reps and the 20-yard shuttle putting up 4.08. That's a 1/10 of a second slower than Jackson Smith and Jiba did. That's insane. So, and also he made a highlight reel jumping up Odell one-handed catch during the combine. So, like, he's got really good hands, and they're giant. 11 inches. That is like out to here. That's ridiculous. So I don't really give a shit about drafting a tight end, but if we do draft this guy, he's gonna be a freak.
Yeah.
Offensive lineman. I don't think this is a great offensive line draft. Honestly, I don't even really care about talking about it too much. There wasn't anyone that stood out as, like, 4.97 being the fastest 40 for any offensive lineman.
I don't care about the offensive line in this draft because we already got our guys. The only guy I care about really is getting a center.
We got to get one of these guys. I want Luke Wypler, however you say it. I think he's going to end up being the best center. I know
there's a guy out of Minnesota,
John Michael Schmitz.
Yeah.
So I would be fine with us getting him, but I don't want to draft him in the 1st round because this isn't. I know he's kind of got a funny picture. This isn't a Tyler Linderbaum or a Creed Humphrey we're talking about here. This guy athletically is not.
Yeah, this is a Michael Schmitz we're talking here.
Yeah, he God damn it. He's not as nearly as athletic as those guys. So, like, I think he'd be our starter, but, like, take him in the bottom of the 2nd round. Don't spend a 1st round pick on him. Mm-hmm. But I think Luke Wypler, who's a little more athletic, especially in the Shane Waldron offense, like, you're going to be pulling guards a lot. The profile that we're looking for is more of a stout, athletic center, not like a super tall, slow guy. So we have to draft a center in this class, but I don't want to use a 1st round pick on it. I'd be most down with a 3rd round pick, honestly, but I digress. Mm-hmm. Moving on to some more fun topics of conversation. This is a great edge class. Like, this is one of the deeper edge classes I've seen. And one guy who we could get at the top of the 1st, like pick 20, Nolan Smith. Dude, he ran a 4.3 as a pass rusher. That is so insane. And maybe it's not like, I don't know. I think it is a need on our defense because our pass rush was still bad last year. So I don't know if he's someone we're really going to be targeting because he's a bit smaller, but really, really good combine. You had a bunch of guys running the 4.4s, and one guy I wanted to highlight. And look, I don't know how to say his fucking name, so I'm just going to say the guy from Northwestern that is
we'll just call him 8-8.
8-8, yeah. I'm down for that. He's 6'2", 280 pounds, ran a fucking 4.49. That shouldn't be possible. Not only that, but he played at the Senior Bowl and was, like, bowling over all of these offensive line prospects that are going to get drafted this year. So, like, he's got power too. This is a guy we could get in the 2nd round potentially, and you could play him at 3-4 defensive end, what Shelby Harris plays. I'm down for it. That's one of the guys I have my eye on. But honestly, like, Lucas Van Ness looked really good. Will Anderson was as advertised. Didn't run an elite 40. I don't care. He's a great player. This is a good year to be looking for defensive linemen for sure. Because if you go to the bigger bodies, Kalijah Cansey, same school and roughly same size as Aaron Donald. He actually broke Aaron Donald's record for the 40-yard dash for defensive tackles by 1/100th of a second. So virtually tied.
Chill. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is another guy that the top 2 rounds we could go after. Honestly, the list goes on with these guys, but this is we're in a really good spot to be needing defensive linemen in this draft because it looks like overall probably a better class than last year, at least as far as depth goes. And then the rest of them I'm going to kind of breeze through because I think the exciting stuff stops when you stop talking about offense, to be honest.
Agreed.
But the linebacker group, not a great linebacker class, but one guy I want to highlight, Jack Campbell. Maybe there in the third round or late second. But
he looks like that name and that image just looks like someone from Iowa.
I know. And he like, honestly, Iowa keeps coming out with great defensive players. Like, he's a big guy, 6'5", 250, ran a 4.65. Didn't do the bench, but obviously he's a thumper, so to speak. He hits guys hard. We need a linebacker that knows how to fucking stop the run. Jordan Brooks and Cody Barton were both bad at it last year. I think he's someone that maybe he's not a superstar, but he's going to be a tackle machine. He can cover. I just think to be more physical, we need a little more weight in the linebacker room. Another guy we looked at, Diane Henley from WSU. I like him. He's only 225. Like, I don't know. I don't think that's going to help our run defense when you have a smaller guy trying to stop bigger players.
Yeah.
It's not a great linebacker group this year. Trenton Simpson is probably going to be the first guy off the board, and he's also undersized. Another guy that's he's 235, so a bit bigger, but I remember back in the day, linebacker was like 240, 250, 260, and as the game is changing, they're getting lighter, but Cody Barton is like, I think 230s. I just don't think a guy that small, unless they're truly a special talent, can hang with these offensive guards coming to block them and with these tight ends. And so I definitely think we need to take a linebacker or two in this draft, but Jack Campbell's the only name that I really am interested in.
Yeah.
I know corner probably isn't a top need, but just a couple guys to highlight. DJ Turner ran a blazing 40 speed, same time as Tariq Woolen. I think he's a bit smaller though. 5'11", 178. He's not tiny, but he's not 6'4" and 210 like Tariq Woolen. So,
yeah.
But this is a guy we actually had a pre-combine meeting with, Calais Ringo. He's a bigger body corner, 6'2", 207. For some reason, has tiny baby hands for that big body. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
He's from Tacoma.
Oh yeah, I didn't even realize that. But just the height and weight and 4.36 40. I mean, I don't want to spend a first on a corner, but if this guy falls to us in round 2 or 3.
He also went to Georgia, so
exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, and that defensive pass rusher, Nolan Smith, also went to Georgia that ran the 4.3 as a pass rusher. So yeah, there's when it comes to the defensive backfield, I don't really recognize a lot of these names, but I'll just highlight some that I've heard us linked to. So Sidney Brown, mid-round safety prospect, probably around 4 or 5, maybe around 3 at the highest. Put up 23 reps on the bench press, weighing 211. That's pretty impressive.
That is, damn, yeah.
With Jamal Adams injuries and Quandre Diggs injuries and both of their age, plus Ryan Neal being a restricted free agent, it's not like a huge need of our team, but it's something we should maybe take a look at in the mid rounds for sure. I mean, that's where we drafted Cam Chancellor's 5th round pick. So. That's pretty much the main like freaks and just notable players I watched at the combine this week. What any takeaways from all that, or
I pretty much said all I needed to say. I kind of hope we don't draft a corner. Safety, like you said, late round, 5th at the earliest, in my opinion, is what I would hope to see. I guess after this podcast, I feel like I want a quarterback a little bit more than I did when this started, just because, like getting a defensive guy would be great. The only time, or I guess the only scenario I would say that I would not want a quarterback. And I think this is the scenario that I would want the most out of any scenario for us to trade the pick or whatever, is trading the pick to Carolina, trading back to their pick, the 9th pick, and then getting their first next year. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Because I think that they would end up with a Will Levis, and I don't think that they would have a successful first season. That's a lot of.
If we have 3 top 10 picks 3 years in a row, that would really, really set us up for a great 2025. That should be the move,
That's the only scenario that I would do above anything else. It would be a bummer to not get that quarterback, but I mean, I didn't want that situation an hour and a half ago. So
yeah. My dream scenario, honestly, number one dream scenario is if somehow Will Anderson falls to us, because I think he's going to be so good in the NFL that it's almost as impactful as having that quarterback. Because, I mean, he's going to be an instant impact player, right? But then after that, I would like either CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson, because I don't see any scenario where Bryce Young falls to us. I just don't think it's going to happen. But beyond that, Jalen Carter suddenly horrifies me. Tyree Wilson is, some people have him above Will Anderson. To me, he's a clone of Carlos Dunlap, which is a great player, but I don't know if I want to spend the 5th overall pick on that, to be honest. So, if Will Anderson, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and Richardson are all gone at pick 5, I'm trading down, just as you say, because I think we have a lot of holes to fill on this team still. We can't even do it all in one draft and free agency. So we gotta keep thinking, going through this soft rebuild we've been doing of the Seattle Seahawks, and look to 2024. So I'm with you there.
I feel like this is kind of a big what if, but I heard this the other day, and I thought it was a kind of an intriguing prospect, if you will. But do you think maybe there are talks between Geno and the Seahawks of maybe making maybe a verbal agreement to a contract, but not? I don't know. When do they have to sign Geno? Because could they do it in the sense that hold off on signing him to make the 5th pick more valuable, to try and trade that pick, maybe to convince people that because we haven't re-signed Geno yet, we're going for that quarterback with that 5th pick? Whereas, I mean, other teams won't know if we're trying to sign Geno or not. So we could basically bluff and be like, all right, well, we're going to use the 5th pick on this guy. Unless you want him, we can trade him to you, and then you give us, I'm mainly talking about Carolina.
Even the Raiders too at 7.
Yeah, we could kind of hold that pick hostage and just talk with both of those teams and try and get their next year's first. Which, again, that's what I would want to do. I would want to load up on draft picks and get a team's first pick for next year that I would think would not have a successful season.
Because think of it this way: what if we trade our pick, move down 2 to 5 spots? I want to stay in the top 10. I don't want to go further than the top 10.
Same.
What if we do that? That team we trade for their 2024 first round pick shits the bed. All of a sudden, we end up with Caleb Williams in 2024, who's better than all of these quarterbacks, to be honest. Very, very, very dream, pipe dream scenario. But, dude, I mean, did we think we were going to get the 5th overall pick when we traded Russell Wilson? No. A boy can dream, So, yeah, I'm with you. But what's so fun about this is all of the options are on the table, and we have no idea what's going to happen until April 27th. But normally every draft day we have to wait 2 hours before we pick. This year it's going to be in the first 30 minutes. And every pick before us there's going to be so much tension, because are they going to trade? Are they going to take this guy? It's going to be the funnest draft I think I'll have ever watched because of that.
I think that's just kind of watching the draft last year. I feel like that's going to be every year. It's going to just get better and better, because we're going to we're just going to be more knowledgeable of the draft and what to expect, expecting the unexpected. And watching the draft has made me, I think, just as far as an NFL fan goes, it's brought my awareness levels of the league like tenfold. Like, it is like so much better than it was prior.
I've also been making way better fantasy moves since I started paying attention. I wish I'd done this years ago.
It is kind of, I mean, because we're in that dynasty league, it's kind of crucial for us to pay attention to that, to this, to be successful. And I mean, we all gamble with that league, so we would kind of be stupid, and it would kind of be like lackluster of us to not do that and shoot ourselves in the foot and not have any knowledge about any of the prospects coming up in the NFL.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna like be making some video content for the draft for sure. I think like kind of like how we had some reactions last year, but yeah, it's gonna be fun. Well, we got free agency coming up in a week from today, Jonah. I think just like last year, there's gonna be a flurry of moves because have you heard some of the rumors that came up today that the Titans are trying to shop Derrick Henry? And that Bud Dupree just got released by the Titans. A bunch of teams are trying to make cap moves. Allen Robinson on the trade block. Jalen Ramsey on the trade block. The list goes on, man. It's going to be a wild week next week for NFL moves. So I think we should just hold off on the next podcast till
all that happens.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just going to be all speculation. But
agreed.
Yeah, one prediction that I have for the pending free agency, besides the Daniel Jones thing, is that we're going to see Bobby Wagner and Jalen Ramsey potentially on other teams by the end of next week.
You think there's any chance that Bobby comes home? Or
I do, and boy, would I love to see it. But the thing is, I know the offseason started and we had $30 million in cap space. It's already down to $25 million. We already can't even afford to pay Geno $30 million this year without being over the cap. And I think we're going to cut some people like Gabe Jackson, for example, clear up some space. But looking at the salary cap, it's hard to imagine unless Bobby really, really just wants to come home and play for like $5 million. And unless that happens, it's really hard to picture happening. Because if you get Bobby, you almost can't re-sign Geno.
Yeah.
You know? So I would love to see it. It's hard to see logistically how it would work out.
Right.
But yeah, that's all I had for this week's episode. I think that was one of the longer ones.
That was a little long. That was like an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Hour and 20.
That was fun stuff though.
Yeah.
I mean, the off season this is the hottest time of the year for it. So it's going to be fun doing these up until and even a little bit after April, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Season 2 of JR Takes is going to be a pretty hype fest filled off season.
Yeah, we got approved for a higher budget. We got a producer. No, it's maybe one day.
We got it. There was a rumor of a new actor coming in to replace Ryan, but that rumor was shut down immediately.
That was fake news.
Yeah.
Well, all right, guys. Thanks for listening if you made it this far, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yep. Thanks for listening.